So I thought I'd start with something I saw on Sustainable Merton's Instagram page, which is this? There we go. Which is the well-known saying, "Be part of the solution." And you know, they're just 5 words, but I think they are the be-all and end-all. I think that being part of the solution, people feeling like they are being a part of the solution, is the goal. It's the goal of all climate activism, and really involving people in that movement, to me, is the most important thing we can do. Now, I wanted to sort of break this down into being a part of and the solution in a funny sort of way. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the solution. And it's worth saying that I'm coming at all of this from a climate perspective. And I know that environmentalism, sustainability have got many different arms, and it's not all climate, albeit it's all interconnected. But climate change, the climate crisis, is what I'm passionate about, and that's what I wanted to talk about. Now, the solution, and you say be a part of the solution. To me, the solution to climate change is led by people. It has to come from people. The actions we take in our day-to-day life aren't just little things around the side. They are the biggest driver of change in our society. And of course, we need that bigger, broader systemic change from our businesses and from our politicians. But really, businesses and politicians are just wanting to please us. They create products and services that they think we will want and we will pay for. And politicians create policies that they think we will vote for. So what we do, what we think, our priorities, our concerns, really are the biggest drivers of change for this big systemic change that we're all looking for. And I think often there's a slight naivety perhaps in the conversation where people say, we need systemic change. You know, it's not about individual change, we need systemic change. Where really, I believe that systemic change is a product of individual change. And if we want that bigger systemic change that we so desperately need, it has to come from us as people. You know, we are the ones who can change the priorities of these businesses and politicians to put climate change right at the top of their list, to make it in their short-term interest to do something about climate change. So the solution, albeit I'm only talking about it for about a minute, but people taking control of climate action by making it in the interest of politicians and businesses to fight climate change. Or put simply, just people getting involved in climate action. You know, people coming together and saying, I want to be a part of it, I want to get involved. I wrote an article recently called "The Only Solution to Climate Change and Why You're It." I'm not going to take you through that now, but if you want to read more and learn more about my sort of beliefs on that, I think Amy's going to circulate this afterwards, so you'll be able to click through that and have a look. So if that's the solution that we're trying to reach, how do we get people to be a part of the solution? You know, this is, to me, the million-dollar question. How do you get people to want to be a part of that solution? Now, we've done a lot of research around what stops people from being a part of that solution. You know, climate change is complex psychologically. There's lots of reasons why people don't like to think about it, don't like to talk about it. It's intangible, it's invisible, it's big, it's scary. It's a lot of things, which generally mean people are pretty good at putting their head in the sand and waiting and thinking, I'm going to wait for some social cues on this. I'm not going to do much until I see other people acting. I'm going to sort of sit in the middle of the pack socially on this. But how do we get people to come out of their comfort zone a little bit and be a part of that solution? So, reasons why people don't act on climate change. I'm just going to move this so I can see my whole screen. So reasons why people don't act on climate change. I'm just going to bring up the sort of the 10 or so main reasons, the feedback we've got, the main reasons why people don't act on climate change. So cost, inconvenience. People think it's perhaps expensive to buy those sustainable goods, or inconvenient to do the sustainable action. Not knowing what to do. This can either manifest itself in people not feeling like they have enough information to know what to do, or feeling like they've got information overload and they hear so many different things from different people and it contradicts each other, and they don't really know what are the actions they can take or they should take on climate change. Low impact of action, powerlessness. We'll come on to talk about this more, but feeling that the impact of your actions is pretty small. You know, we're 8 billion people. What impact do I have as an individual? You know, what's the point really? I'm so small. Individual nature or isolation, and again, we'll talk about this in more detail, but feeling like you're an individual, you're alone and you're isolated. You don't have a community, perhaps like you do with Sustainable Merton, but feeling like you're isolated in your way of trying to deal with climate change, and feeling like you're small and you don't know what other people are doing. You haven't got that sense of community, and that is really paralyzing when it comes to tackling a big issue, and is of course linked to the powerlessness. Skepticism, people are pretty skeptical climate change because it's this big, scary psychological problem. People are quite skeptical about the science, about the solutions. So breaking through that skepticism, I think, is important. I touched on this briefly. It's too negative. It's negative. It's depressing. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I put my head in the sand and don't really engage with it. So that's, I suppose, a step before acting on it. People not really wanting to think about it and engage with it. And then there's cultural stigma. People feeling like this is still an environmental issue and isn't really one that their people, that their group, their social group is engaged with and has anything to do with. So very broadly, these are the sort of the 7 main themes that come out when we ask people why they don't take more action on climate change. And I want to talk a little bit more. Well, essentially our goal as Snowball is to try and break down all of these barriers, to try and say these are the barriers to action. How can we break these down and create a solution that tackles all of these and makes it an appealing proposition to take action on climate change? I'm going to talk a little bit more about 3 that I think are important: not knowing what to do, that low impact of action and powerlessness, and the individual nature or isolation. So first, not knowing what to do, and this the solution that Snowball is hoping to provide, and you're going to see some pictures which aren't some screenshots which aren't from our current website. They're from a prototype of the next version we're trying to build, which I thought was a better thing to get your feedback on and to talk about today. So not knowing what to do. Well, we want to make it simple, make it really simple, show people exactly what they can do to tackle climate change. So show them the top, we say here, top 10 or 20. At the moment on our website there's 12, but not too intimidating a list of things that they can look at. They can spend a minute on this on one page and can say, okay, I get it. These are the things I can do. This is the approximate impact of taking those actions. I understand what these things are. I can see how I could take action in this. This isn't too complicated. I've got a pretty clear picture of what I can do to tackle climate change. So here are some examples of some of the actions they could do and how we might represent them on the website with these tiles. So we want to make information simple, concise, non-judgmental and clear. And people will be allowed to, or be able to, and will be encouraged to pledge to take action in each area. So they might make a pledge to use less fast fashion or to take more public transport. So they're making that commitment to themselves and to the other people on the platform to make change. And of course, along with these sort of tiles and the headline information of what that we're giving people, we'll also give people the resources and the tools they need to help them take action. So if we think of this sort of solution as like a cake where we're trying to tackle we're trying to knock down all of those barriers, I feel like this is the sort of the bottom layer of the cake. You know, we're saying this is what you can do. It's really simple. We're laying it out for you. You can get a pretty good idea of it in just a couple of minutes. This is what you can do. This is the sort of fundamental base layer of our cake. So this is this next barrier we're trying to break down. People thinking my actions have no impact. I'm powerless. I'm small. You know, what I do isn't really going to make much of a difference. So we have to. Sorry, I thought someone said something there. So we have to show people what their impact is. We have to make people realize that they can have a real, important, tangible impact on climate change. And I think there's 2 ways of doing that. The first, which you'll probably have seen, is a carbon footprint calculator. I'll talk more about that in a second. And the second is to say to people, this is the average impact of you taking actions. We're not going to talk about your carbon footprint specifically. We're going to talk about the average impact of you taking that action. So I see these as the 2 ways that you can show people the impact they're having in each one of these areas. So if they're committing to fly less, you can either link that through to their carbon footprint, or you can say this is the average impact of taking that action. Now, there's quite a few carbon footprint calculators. I think you spoke to Geeky. I don't know if many of you were on the meeting you had with them recently, and they are linked to carbon footprint calculator. And it's a very sensible, very reasonable way to try and explain the impact that people are having and trying to show people that they have a real impact. And the great benefit of a carbon footprint calculator is that, of course, it's personalized and it's accurate. So it can say to you, we've understood, you've answered some questions, we understand what your carbon footprint is, we understand how you can manage it down, and we'll tell you with some accuracy how you can reduce your carbon footprint. So that is a big tick in the box of the carbon footprint calculator approach. However, it requires a lot of data to be accurate. You've got to give me a lot of information as a user. I've got to ask for a lot of information about how you travel, how you shop, what you buy, all these things to get a really good picture of your carbon footprint calculator, of your carbon footprint, and to engage you on that over the long term. I've got to get quite a lot of data from you, which is quite a big ask for a user to say, can you give me lots of information? I want to ask lots of questions about you, and you have to continually update that data for me to feel like I've got an ongoing idea of what your carbon footprint is. It's negative. A carbon footprint is hard to escape the fact that it's negative framing. It's a dirty word, a footprint. It's dirty laundry, and it's hard to motivate people on something that's negative. To say you are bad for the planet, you've got a carbon footprint, it's X. How can we make you less bad for the planet? Now, of course, people will structure that message in a better way than that, but it's very hard to escape the sort of negativity associated with a carbon footprint and helping people reduce the size of that. And if I'm asking you lots of information about yourself and I'm giving you a solution that's tailored to your carbon footprint, it's very focused on you as an individual. It's very much about you and what you are doing and how you can reduce your negative impact on the planet. Now, with climate change, it's inescapable that we're small and that this is a big problem, and that whatever actions we take, we can tell people the positive impact of the actions they're taking, but it's always going to feel small versus the whole world. Being one of 8 billion people, it's always going to feel like a small impact on a much bigger problem. And with a carbon footprint calculator, if I'm making it about you and about your impact, it's hard to get away from that individual focus. It's hard to draw people to a more exciting message of this is collectively what we're achieving. You know, this is what you're doing, but together we're achieving this, and think how exciting it can be if more people join, think where this movement can go. If it's about carbon footprints, it's almost by definition individual, and it's hard to move people away from that and drag them towards this more exciting collective impact. So that's the carbon footprint calculator route. If we look at sort of average impact, and by average impact, I mean you commit to take an action, and I say, based on where you live and the commitment you've made to change, the average impact of taking that action is X. Now, the negative here is, of course, it lacks that accuracy and that personalization that you get with a carbon footprint calculator, and there's no escaping that. But it does mean there's less input required from the user. You can make a commitment, and as long as you confirm you're still taking that action, we can tell you the average impact of what you're doing. We can frame it as positive. We can frame the positive impact of it. So rather than saying, here's a carbon footprint, let's make it a bit smaller, we can say, taking this action is positive, has a real positive impact on the planet. It reduces the emissions that you're putting into the atmosphere. You know, we can frame it as the equivalent number of trees planted or something like that. So it's easier to have that positive framing of impact when we're looking at averages rather than looking at more individual, more personalized. And it means we can put the focus on the collective. We can say, yes, this is the average impact that you're having, but this is the much bigger impact we're all having. This is about us as a collective. It's important what you're doing, but we want to drag you towards that collective, that big vision, that big exciting movement that you're a part of. So these are the two options. There's carbon footprint calculators that you can find. Certainly there's lots of them. We're more interested in the average impact direction of saying this is the approximate impact that you're having, and making people feel good about that positive impact that they're having. So clear information on positive impact, tangible impact indications, such as the equivalent number of trees planted for your action. So it might look something like this. So you've committed to 5 actions. Within each of actions, you get a grading, gold, silver, or bronze. So you've got 2 gold, 2 silver, and 1 bronze. And the impact of those actions over the time you've been taking them for is the same as there being 498 trees. Or we might also give the kilograms of carbon dioxide prevented. So show people that their relatable, understandable impact that their actions are having, and make them feel good about it, reward them, give them medals and reward for taking those actions. So once we've moved them on their individual impact, we want to move them as well on their sort of invited impact, we call it. So this is, a user will be able to invite their friends, And in this case, 7 of their friends have joined, and you can see the number of actions that your invited friends have taken and the impact that your invited friends' actions have had. So yes, you've got your own personal impact. That's great, and that's exciting to you, hopefully. But you can see that by inviting people, you can have this much bigger, more exciting impact. So we want to show people, again, drag them away from the sort of the size of their own individual impact and show them they can have this much bigger impact if they involve other people in the movement. And then also finally communicate that global impact that everyone on the platform is having. So not just about your own individual impact, not just about the people you've invited, but say, really, this is a collective. This is what we're achieving together. This is exciting. This is where we can go if more people join. So that's how we're going to hopefully make people feel like their actions have an impact and they're part of a much bigger movement of impact. And then I'm alone in my actions. I talked briefly about this on the first slide. And this really plays into the powerlessness. You know, you feel small. You don't feel like you've got a community to take action with. And when you're facing such a big problem, trying to tackle it on your own is a big ask. Psychologically, it's a big ask to say to someone, here's climate change, take some action to be part of the solution on your own. It's really difficult to get people to do that. And really, if you look at the research into what is the biggest driver of behavioral change on climate, you know, what really moves people to action, particularly on climate change, the answer is almost always social. It's almost always, this is what other people are doing, this is what my friends are doing, this is what my family are doing. If you compare that to the effectiveness of saying, this is the impact of your actions, or this is the positive impact of your actions, or negative impact if you frame it that way, it's far more effective just to use the social. And there's been studies in hotel rooms, if you're trying to get people to reuse their towels rather than get them washed each day, the best way they found to make more people not get their towels washed, so, you know, take that environmental decision, isn't to say this is the impact of washing your towel. It's just to say a majority of people don't get their towels washed each day. It's just to give them that social normalization, that social validation of action. So we believe that's a hugely important part of any sort of social solution. So we want to make people feel connected. We want to show users who else is committed to action, and we want to use that social normalization and validation to really drive change. Essentially, we want to make it easy to be inspired by your friends and family. You know, at the moment, I find that I might be talking to a friend or a member of my family and find out that they're doing something that's positive on the climate. You know, they might have stopped eating red meat, or they might be cycling to work because they know that's better for the planet. And I think, wow, that's really impressive. I didn't know that. That's kind of inspired me to do more. And at the moment, all our actions are so individual, they're so separate, they're so dispersed. And it would be so much more powerful if we could bring all those actions together on a platform and allow those actions to inspire each other. So that when you go to the supermarket and buy some really sort of low carbon, if you want to call it that, food, you're not just doing that and sitting at home thinking this is good for the planet. You know that action, you committed to take that action on Snowball, and you know that that's inspiring your friends, it's inspiring people around the world to join you in taking that action. So in each one of our actions, we want to show people who's doing it, you know, the number of people all around the world who are doing it. We want to show them which of their Facebook friends, so we'll link this through to Facebook, they'll log in hopefully through Facebook, and they'll be able to see which of their Facebook friends is taking that same action in each one of these areas. And if we're lucky enough to have any, we'll also show the famous people, celebrities, influencers, whatever you want to call them, are also taking action in that area, so that people can make a commitment to change and know that I'm making that same commitment, not on my own anymore, but I'm making it with this community of 12,500 people, with 6 of my other friends, and with these 7 people that I admire, I'm taking the same action they are to fight climate change. So those are the big 3. There were a few others on that first page, which I'm going to quickly talk through. Now, we touched on this briefly. It's too depressing, negative, so people put their head in the sand. You know, I'd love Snowball to be that positive solution that people come to as that safe place, that place they like to be on climate change. You know, climate change, big scary issue, but I can go to Snowball, I can feel good about it, I can feel like I'm part of positive change. So we want to show people the positive impact of their actions, not say this is your carbon footprint, how can we reduce that, but say this is the positive impact of your action. We want to use a hopeful, exciting message, make people feel like they're part of something that's exciting. And we want to use that social reward, you know, show people that they're inspiring their friends, that they're part of a community of change, and make them feel like it's a fun thing to do, like they're enjoying taking action on climate change. people are skeptical, well, be open and honest. I think that's always a good starting point. Give some control to users. I think this is quite important when you're trying to build that sense of a movement. We don't want to be prescriptive and say, this is what you must do, and this is, our law is the way it's going to go down. We want to allow people to suggest actions, to suggest tools and resources, give people some control over the movement, and allow them to feel like they're a part of what we're doing, not just a user of it.
Harry,
yes.
Can I interrupt just for a second?
Of course.
Thank you. One of the reasons we found over the years for people's skepticism is actually because of a very poor leadership from above. Because on the doorstep, I've often had people say to me, well, if everything you're telling me is true, why aren't they doing more about it? And until we get our policymakers, our leaders, to actually do more about it, that skepticism is going to be very hard to evaporate.
Yeah, that's interesting that you put it that way, that people, and that's not something that I've heard. So this is exactly why I'm glad we had the we're doing this. So you found that people are not skeptical that politicians aren't doing it for the wrong reasons, but that they believe that if it was such a serious problem that people say it is, then politicians would be doing more. Is that
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that poor leadership from above is one of the reasons that organisations like ours are, struggling to make massive impact, because we are a small voice compared to the Prime Minister or the head of British industry or whatever.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. My belief is that yes, politicians will try and make the right noises, but that they, as I sort of touched on at the beginning, they'll only really take urgent action on climate change. They'll only really be able to take that urgent action when they can see that when they're talking to their voters, they're getting the data back that people are ready for it. And that's perhaps a cynical way of looking at it, but I don't think that politicians can ever really step too far out of line with what they think their electorate want. So yes, we'll take some leadership from our leaders, but in my mind, our leaders often don't really lead, they follow what they believe their voters, or as a business, what their consumers want. So I suppose what I would try and do as part of Snowball, it's a difficult message to communicate, but it's to say, don't wait for leadership from them, because they're waiting for leadership from you. They're waiting for you to drive that change. And
exactly right.
But the challenge, of course, is that when you get someone to a landing page, for instance, on a website, or to an Instagram profile page, that's a lot to communicate. That's a big message. It's a lot of things to get in, to move someone's psyche from politicians aren't doing enough, so I'm not going to really you're the person who drives the actions of these politicians, is a big thing to communicate. So that challenge, how you communicate that, how you get that across, how you move people from one position to a really very different position, is a real challenge with this sort of thing. Getting that time with people to talk through why and how and all these things. In a world where people's attention spans are sort of 3 or 4 seconds, and you don't really have time to engage in that sort of conversation.
Part of the answer to that question, Harry, we found is that when people come to us, either for advice or to join us, they come with a particular bête noire. They come with a particular issue that really, really bugs them.
Right.
And we found that the best way to make them active is by listening to what it is that they're so fed up about. It could be air quality, it could be how food is wasted, it could be any number of 100 things. But if they feel that they're listened to about that topic, then they're much more likely to become involved.
Yeah, okay. That's very good feedback. Yeah, sorry, my cogs are turning as you're talking, because I think it makes complete sense, and whilst it's good to have a platform, I think, that has a certain number of actions that's not overwhelming, that people can feel like they're taking that action with lots of other people, making it so it's personal to their concerns, and that they're listened to, like you say. And we talked a little bit about that, where I say give some control on this slide. you know, we want people to feel like we care what they think, because we do, you know, and
Yeah.
you're only going to have a successful movement when people are engaged and involved and they're listened to. But that is an entry point, you know, listening to their individual concern and using that as an entry point to join the community is a really interesting thought. Have you got anything else, Tom, or shall I carry on? There's not too much longer.
Sorry, soldier on.
Great. Cultural stigma. You know, this is a big nut to crack, but we want to be a broad church. We want to say everyone's welcome. You know, we don't want to have a message or a brand that's really sort of environmentalist and really sort of activist led. We want to be a broad church and say, you know, we're not going to tell you what to do. We're not going to say this is what you should do. We're just going to say these are the things you can do. We'd love you to be involved in our community. These are the things you can do. We're a big open community of people from all different backgrounds and all different ages. And to have that sort of modern brand, to not feel like another green environmental organization, but to feel modern, to feel new, to feel different. Hopefully that'll help us break that cultural stigma and allow people to think this is a bit different. You know, this isn't tree hugging. You know, this is different, and I want to be a part of it. Because really, and when we talk about cultural stigma, our goal at Snowball, and I think the true win for any climate action platform, is to break through away from the people who are already quite engaged. You know, if you have that sort of bell curve of how concerned people are about climate change, you know, people at the very end who are very engaged already, who are perhaps members of Extinction Rebellion, you know, all of which is great, and they're doing amazing things. But reaching them with a solution that tailors to them and helps them become even more climate aware and take even more climate related actions isn't the big win. The big win is those people in the middle, and the research at the moment shows that there is that big growing percentage of people who are concerned about climate change and who right now might not really have much of a home. And we talked about the importance of community, and I think if you ask most people, and our research shows, if you ask most people, what community can you join to be part of climate action, you know, what can you join, what can you be a part of, most people sort of say Extinction Rebellion, and I don't really know what else. And to most people, Extinction Rebellion is too far. For that first step on the ladder, it's too far for them to join Extinction Rebellion. So we want to say to people, this is a really easy way to get involved, a really easy way to take that first step. You don't have to, we're not going to tell you what to do. We're not going to say you need to take all 12 actions. If you take one action, we'll say that's great. You're doing something positive, you're doing something exciting, and we'll then help you take that next step. We'll take you on that journey, but we'll give you an easy first step, which I think is a first step that's missing at the moment. You know, for a lot of people who aren't really engaged, who aren't perhaps in that more engaged part of that bell curve, I believe there's something missing. There's something in the middle missing that's just saying this is an easy way to be a part of change, and that's kind of where we want to sit. And then cost and convenience, very briefly, you know, make it easy for people, show them the cost-effective ways they can take action, show them that it doesn't have to be inconvenient. So these were our reasons why people don't act on climate change. Don't know what to do. Well, as I said, that bottom layer of the cake, show them really simply the things they can do to take action on climate change. Make it simple so they can understand it in a few minutes. Low impact of action, that powerlessness, show people the impact of their action, show them the positive impact of the action, and show them they've got this potential to inspire others, allow them to invite their friends and see that bigger impact they can have, and then move them collectively on that much bigger impact that we're all having together. That individual nature, isolation, show them what other people are doing, show them they're part of the community, show them their Facebook friends that are also taking that action, make them know that they're not taking that action on their own, they're taking it as part of the community. So hopefully we can put a tick next to that one. It's negative, depressing, you know, so you put your head in the sand. Well, make it positive, make it a fun place to be, make it exciting, and try and allow people to feel the negativity elsewhere, feel the fear elsewhere, and come to Snowball as an optimistic, positive solution. Skepticism, we talked about this, obviously, you know, be open, be honest, be non-profit as we are, I think helps. But really allow people to trust you with the quality of information we show and our sort of lack of judgment or pushing information on them. Cultural stigma, nice broad church, modern brands, not telling people what to do, and cost and convenience, make it easy for people, you know, give them the information they need so they can make that cost-effective decision that doesn't have to cost them the world. So that's a very brief run through of the reasons why people don't act on climate change, the barriers that we see, and how we plan to break them down. And really, what's the vision? Well, we've always believed, and I've always believed, that if you can create a social platform on which people can join with other people and can say, hey, I'm part of change. I can see my personal impact, but I can also see that I'm part of a bigger movement. I can see there's a much bigger collective impact. And if you can have that messaging right to allow people to understand that really, as we touched on briefly there, Tom, that really change comes when people drive that change, and we can't wait for politicians or businesses to fix this problem for us. We've got the potential to drive this change and to lead this change ourselves. And if you can excite people on that message, you can show them their personal impact, and you can show them this much bigger collective impact of all the people around the world who are taking that same action you're taking, then why not? Is there not opportunity to create a big global community of people? Anyone all around the world who can for free can join this network and can say, I'm part of this change. I'm taking the same action that all these people are around the world, and I'm part of this big global movement of change. So our vision, which we'd love to achieve, is that platform that anyone can join and create that global community of action that gathers momentum as it grows, that snowballs. That's why we call Snowball, because there is that momentum gathering.
I love that title.
Great. And that really get around that message of putting people in the driving seat of climate action. And that's not in there to be cute. I really do believe that people can be in the driving seat of climate action if they come together and understand their potential to change and act on it. We've got a prototype of the next version of the website, which I'll show you quickly now. Unless anyone's got any questions now that you want to ask before I show that to you. No, great. Okay. Let me bring that up if I can figure out how to. So hopefully you can all see this now. So this is only a prototype, it's not working yet, but this is a pretty good indication of the direction we're going and how things might look. So these are some of the actions that you'll be able to take. As I say, there's that one page you can say, okay, this is what I'm being asked to do. These are the different actions that I can take. Nice and clear, simple indication of the impact you can have and how many other people are taking each action. If we click into something like green energy, we'll show you the different things you can do. And this text here isn't actually accurate, but the different types of action you can take within each one of those areas. So a sort of bronze level, which is sort of entry level action you can take in that action in that area, silver and gold. Perhaps the tree impact, the annual equivalent number of trees of you taking that action. And then you can commit to action in any one of these areas. So you can say, I'm going to do the silver level in green energy and make that commitment to do it. We'll show people in each action what the number of people who are taking that action and the equivalent impact. We'll probably show that in tons of carbon dioxide prevented as well. So you can see that you're part of this community who are all driving change in this one specific area. Then we've got the impact, a bit of information about the impact of taking action in this area, the benefits of action, the challenges of action. This cutout you saw in the presentation, who's doing it, all the people around the world who are doing it, all your friends who are doing it, and perhaps some of the famous faces who are doing it. We'll give you tips to help you take that action, the tools you'll need to take that particular action, and some interesting information, some sort of facts and further information about it. We'll have stories of people who are taking action in that area already, so you can see other people going through the same challenge as you are with this different behavioural change. And a community, you can ask questions, you can drop a question in there, use the community that's already taking action in that area to ask a question, how can I do this? Where can I find seasonal food in my area, whatever that question might be. And then some further information on the calculations at the foot of the page. And then once you're logged in and on your home page, you'll see something like this. So this is the impact we talked about. This will always sort of be there for you. This is your motivator. The impact of your actions, the impact of the people you've invited, and the actions you're taking. And then we'll have information that hopefully draws you back to the page, which keeps it interesting. So news stories that based on the actions you're taking that you might find interesting, that global impact that we talked about, some suggested news stories you might find interesting. We've got a community sort of tab on the website at the moment, so you can ask those questions, and then you can see notifications here of people having commented on what you're doing or asked you questions. Information on sort of the popular actions at the moment, the trending topics. We might also have latest petitions that you can sign to help take action. So this is sort of your homepage, which shows you the impact you're having, the impact the people you've invited, and the changing content that hopefully keeps you interested and keeps you coming back to the website. And finally, very briefly, there's a button here that says update my impact. So if you click on that, this will be your current impact that you've had. And it says, since you last updated your impact, have you been? And then it shows you the levels of actions that you've made a commitment to in the past. And you can then say, yes, I've been doing that, or I've mostly been doing that, or just a little bit. And when you click on these buttons, this impact at the top of the page will update, it'll tick up, and maybe some trees will be released from the yes button, and they'll go up to your tree number, and you'll be able to see that impact increasing each time you press that button, and see that, and get a real clear indication of the impact these actions are having, and how that adds to your personal impact, and then how that adds to the bigger global so that's a very quick run through of the prototype, and kind of the last thing that I wanted to show you through and talk you through. I might now stop sharing my screen.